Welcome aboard the Tabletop Express, everybody. I am excited to be here tonight for Brian Chandler's Top 20. And with that, I'm going to bring Brian right in. Brian, first and foremost, congratulations on one. I'm just so proud to have you a member of this team. But going through the process of making a Top 20 list, before we dig into it, we have a special guest that you invited for your particular episode. And I'd love for you maybe to do a small introduction before we bring her in.
Absolutely. Hey, Chris. Hi, everybody. Fantastic to be here. I'm excited to share my top 20. And excuse me, before we get going, let's go ahead and bring her on. So Jamie Daggers. Hey, Jamie.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Good. Jamie and I have become friends over this last year or so, or maybe even a little less than that, through our mutual friend, Arwen Kafke, Cardboard Time. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Apologies to Arwen. But yeah, Jamie, maybe go ahead and do an intro. Kind of what are you about? I mean, you're obviously a friend of the show and have been on before, but those who maybe haven't met you before, in case my mom's watching.
That's okay. Most people know me as a mini painter. That's first and foremost what I do. I stream full time, mostly painting minis, but I also do some board game content. And recently I've introduced video game content to my stream as well. So at this point, I am now a variety streamer. And that is mostly what I do. I also do some work for Weird Giraffe Games. And in general, I'm just a content creator of all kinds. I fancy myself a very fledgling designer of sorts. I've had ideas that I've been trying to put to paper, so that's been exciting, and I'm just like making my way in the industry. So it's been fun to get to know everybody through opportunities like this.
Well, I'm so glad you're here. It's your second time in the past few weeks because you were recently on the table with us. I will say we've got some people in the audience. We've got Rachel has informed me that I am wearing her favorite color. So that's I didn't know that, but that's awesome. I will note that for future streams. Ryan talking about getting his Game Nerds cart ready so he can buy all of the games that he doesn't own, Brian. So there you go. You're
nice.
You're gonna go cost Ryan
some money. Question and a comment, Chris. What color are you wearing?
Yes, you know what? I should be more refined than this. It's like a burgundy kind of color.
Fantastic.
I call it Winter Soldier Red personally because
I love it.
Anything I have is because I saw him wear it in a movie. But
I'd say it's a dark red.
Yeah, it's like a dark red. It's a little bit more burgundy, but I don't know if it shows up on stream that way. Look, my color of my shirt is not that interesting. What is interesting is your top 20 picks. Right, and I'm Chris Burgundy. We're gonna move on from that one. So yeah, look, we are talking about top 20s, and this is the first in our series of top 20 videos. I will be here on Wednesday sharing mine. And on that note, I want to make one thing clear. I will not be letting people know if there's crossover to my list just yet. We're going to see what you put down. And as it gets to my list, we'll certainly reference if there's any crossovers. So with that, I am excited to bring up the big board, everybody. So kudos where it's due. Ryan, my co-conductor, has done amazing work. And I just love what he's created. And here we are. This is Brian's top 20,
top
everybody.
20.
Now,
yay.
If you see
Brian's outdone himself.
Yeah.
He continues to make tools and stuff. If you're on the Discord, I think you can actually get the GitHub files if you want to use this for your own top 20, whatever. It's available to you.
Yeah, Ryan says all done in React, by the way. So if anyone wants to know how he did it,
fantastic. But I have no idea what that means, but I'm sure
it means something to someone, not me or you, though. But let's get into the good stuff here. So you went through a process of picking your top 20. I have to ask you before we start, what was your process like? Because everyone's process for this I found is a little bit different.
Yeah. Great question. The first time I did this was a year ago for Tabletop Express. It was the first time I'd ever made a top, really anything list in terms of gaming. Just for those who don't know me, I've only been in really hobby gaming for about 5 years. And so much of my list last time was, I'd only been in hobby gaming for 4 years, and half of that had been during the pandemic. And so my games, I think, very much reflected both of those things. And this year had actually interesting, a lot of games have stayed, but have gone up or down, the list. But I have quite a few new games. So even if you saw the stream last year, or of course you did your homework and watched last year's stream yesterday or this morning to prepare for today, that you may see you're going to see quite a few differences. Process that I went through is I decided to start from scratch-ish and go to, I think it's called Pub Meeple, right? Is that the website? Yep. So I started with Pub Meeple. That does a very basic dump in your BGG your BGG list, kind of factor out the ones you want. I started by reducing that down to 50 or 60 or so. And then it just does comparison. So you sit there and just kind of click this or that. It gives you 2 to choose from. And basically the question that I asked myself was, of these 2 games, which one would I rather play right now? So that's why I started. That probably got me about 80 to 90% there. Then moved a few things around, up and down for various reasons. Added a couple special ones that I just wanted to talk about. So it's definitely there's no perfect science to this, right? It's everybody's kind of choosing what your top is. Fully expect my top list to change a year from now. There's a lot of very popular games, especially very popular games on this channel that I have not played. I've never played Marvel Champions, so that game's not going to show up. Although I have no problem with that game. I'm looking forward to trying it one of these days. Never played Arkham Horror LCG, so that game's not going to show up. But I actually put it on my table last week and almost started playing it. So close start. So a couple honorable mentions that I've never played that I know other folks in the chat and on the Discord are big fans of. So that's kind of how I started.
Well, let's jump right in. Let's start with your number 20. And
20 is a bit of a throwback, kind of a retro play. Go ahead and hit it. Let's just talk about it.
Can I interject for a second?
Please interject.
I was asked to come on and like do my thing, and unfortunately my thing is interrupting a lot. So
no, that's perfect.
I'm just gonna come out and tell you that it's gonna happen a bunch.
That's your job.
All right.
Okay. I just didn't want people thinking I was just here to be rude.
Jamie is here to be rude. That's her job. First one is Pokemon the card game. The trading card game. This is actually from the 90s. Oh, you know what? I cannot read the screen. So I got all the other stuff up. So I can't read the words on the screen, just FYI. So if I forget designer names, artist names, I know this came out in the mid 90s. I mostly played, this is interesting. I deep dove into Pokemon, the trading card game, for about 2 years in the early 2010s during the Heart Gold and Soul Silver time, both on the DS, and I didn't play a lot on DS, but both of my kids did, and on the paper cards. So went to our friendly local game store in Seattle, Blue Highway Games, fantastic shop in the Queen Anne neighborhood if you're local, and got the starter kit for Pokemon, and the rest was history. Played a lot of Pokemon. We ended up joining the Saturday morning club or whatever, live plays or club plays every Saturday. And so, and I joined as well. So got murdered by a bunch of 9-year-olds pretty regularly playing Pokemon. And so that's really my primary and frankly kind of only knowledge of Pokemon, both the games, video game and the card game, is Heart Gold, Soul Silver. I know it pretty well. But I don't know anything else about Pokemon. So please don't ask. But that's my number 20, Pokemon TCG.
I'll note I play this with my son. He collects them, but he actually plays them, and it's a good time. We enjoy it. It doesn't make my top 20. I will give that away, but it's one that I appreciate. Sky, by the way, chiming in saying I had a lot of fun this when it came out. I think was one of the only kids who wanted to play and not just trade. And I think that's still the case of a lot of people today. There's a lot of kids who just want to play this. And
yeah, and I guess I didn't really talk about mechanics of this game, but Pokemon's a great game. Actually, it's really good. And I can't speak to like the current version or the meta or any of that kind of stuff. But when we were playing back then, I think it's a great game for kids to learn, great game for kids to learn a little math, to learn how to lose. The social aspects of that, I think, are important. And A little bit different than Magic the Gathering, where you always kind of win or lose and lose your cards. Cards stay on the table from turn to turn, which I think is kind of an interesting thing and different than some other head-to-head card games like it. So yeah, I'm a fan. Highly recommend it especially if you have kids in that 5 to 12 range, probably anywhere in there. I think would be Pokemon would be a perfect place to start.
I have a lot of friends who are like what I would consider to be like try-hard TCG fans who actually really still love this game. So I think it's still got something there for people. I know I played when I was younger. I played completely wrong, as Ryan said in chat. But I will say I was not part of the group that got it banned from my school.
Oh wow!
It was just like
I see.
I don't actually know why. I think it was because there was a lot of like fighting over trading that was happening. Also, I think they thought it had something to do with gambling, but adults being out of touch and whatnot.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me. By the way, Rachel, we all feel this. The cards are floating all around my house. Yeah, that's true. I have a pile of cards like off camera to my right that are my son's cards. So I think that's fairly common. I think it is still a popular game. I like seeing on your list because I do think it remains relevant more than ever, actually, with the final season of Pokemon airing in the United States of at least this current set. They'll start a new arc with a new people soon. But yeah. Oh, that's horrible, by the way. I still took all our cards and sold them. We had so many.
Oh no.
There could have been some money in there. But that's your number 20. And I think it sets a good pace for, again, the new to you. So you'll, as everyone will know, we'll acknowledge when this is new to the list, not new to this list. But with that, Brian, let's jump into your number 19. That is Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion. That's going to be a popular one, I'm guessing, for many.
So interesting story here. This is the newest to me on the list. I've played Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion for exactly 3 weeks as of this weekend. I just got it to my table just a few weeks ago and played through the tutorials, of which is 5 full scenarios. And I think I'm about 5 more in, maybe in like scenario 10-ish now. This is a great game. I am generally a fan of dungeon crawlers, although I tend to get bored pretty fast. Got to be honest, I don't know that I'm going to get through all 25 or 30 missions or however many there are in this game. But what I've played so far, I really like. It's a clean version of the game. If you've tried like big Gloomhaven and bounced off for whatever reason, I would encourage giving this one a try. It's you can see here, it's got the fold out, like the spiral maps. And this one, you actually, in this particular scenario, you take 2 spiral maps and put them together to make the map a little bit bigger. And I think that, from what I understand, I've never played big Gloomhaven, but that makes all the difference in terms of setup and teardown. It's a pretty easy game to set up because being like a dungeon crawler like this. I've played a little bit of Lord of the Rings, Journeys in Middle Earth. I played a little bit of Star Wars Imperial Assault. Those are a lot clunkier in terms of finding 14 different tiles that have just the right number on them and putting them in the right configuration. And I think Jaws of the Lion does a great job of making that part simpler.
Riley actually chiming in it. It seems like the best of them all. The book maps are nicer to set up and take down. From a setup perspective, probably the case. I've set up Gloomhaven before and eventually sold my copy. And I enjoyed Gloomhaven, but there was a lot of different pieces, finding them, etc. I'm sure there's better ways to organize it. And I know Espen's a big fan of Gloomhaven, so he's got Frosthaven waiting for us too. But I would love to give this one a try. This might actually be more my speed in terms of just me soloing a kind of a campaign style game.
The other cool thing is it is, I think, a really nice ramp into Gloomhaven. So if you think you want to get into all the 300 scenarios of all 3 games, I think starting here, both from a story standpoint, I understand it's a prequel to Big Gloomhaven. So if you really like the story parts, so the story is quite good. I mean, it's regular, fantasy dungeon fare, but it's done really well. Had like weird little connections to The Witcher 3, which is one of my favorite video games. So some similarities there in terms of hunting monsters and the townspeople and things of that nature. Jamie, have you tried this one yet?
I have tried Jaws of the Lion. I've tried a little bit of Gloomhaven, the base game, and Frosthaven's sitting right behind me. It's just been opened, but it hasn't been punched or anything yet. But having played through none of them, other than a couple scenarios or whatever, I definitely see the appeal of Jaws of the Lion. And even though I have the big one, I still really want to go get Jaws of the Lion because it's going to be A, so much easier to bring to game night. B, for me, having a handful of minis to paint through instead of the entire box is a lot less intimidating. And then, of course, seeing the potential of being able to talk somebody into playing like, hey, this is a normal sized board game, and then like slowly leading them into, down the primrose path into this giant other game is like more my speed. So
yeah, Ryan's is on Frosthaven's untouched as well, it appears. He did correct me and say I should have said huge fan, not a big fan. He's a huge fan of Gloomhaven. I want to try Jaws of the Lion at some point. I did really like Gloomhaven in the 2 scenarios I did, but the setup was so much that I felt like I spent so much time setting it up that I didn't play it. And so yeah, I'll look forward to trying Ryan's Frosthaven. That's what I've told him and go from there. But I like seeing Jaws on the Line. I think you speak for a lot of people, Brian, though, with Jaws of the Line, because I know it's a big game for a lot of people and an important game because it does lead in. And from my understanding, you can bring those characters into Gloomhaven, so that adds some extra value.
Yeah. Also, 2 other quick things is it does pop up on sale because it is more of almost a mass market or gateway. It'll pop up for $30 online or goes on sale. I don't know if Target's still carrying it, but when they did, you would see it on deals sometimes. And yes, it's easier to set up, but it's still a setup. Like I had the thing set up underneath I've got a game table with the topper on it, and it sat there for a month. I just took it down, I think after scenario 10, just to take a break from it. It was starting to feel a little bit samey to me. Again, I'm playing solo, 2-handed. And so I should probably say that. Playing multiplayer, I could see keeping the momentum going more if you had somebody else playing with you, maybe. But playing solo and having I play a lot of different types of games, as you'll see in the next 18 of these. And so it's hard for me to just really plow through. And but I think I'll come back to it. I would be surprised if I didn't.
Well, speaking of more games, when it comes down to it, you've got number 18 coming up here. So let's drop it and see what number 18 for you is going to be. And it looks like that is Aquamarine, which is a newer one, and that's a print and play.
Yeah, in fact, I think this might be my only, or maybe one of only 2 2022 games. I need to go. I'm not actually looking at my full list right now, but I think it might be my only 22 title. Aquamarine is by Postmark Games. One of the really big deals about this, it's a roll and write. Yeah, that's going to be a theme, so spoiler alert. I'm a big roll and write fan. This one plays really well solo as well. Aquamarine is a print and play game, so you pay $5 or £4. Is that what dollars are? Whatever. These guys are from the UK, and you get a print and play either of this version, or I tend, because I have a crummy black and white printer, and I'm colorblind, I typically almost always print the low ink versions of print and play games. I just find them easier to play. So I've got Aquamarine printed. This is also a good time to mention the game Voyages, which came out in 2021. Sorry, also from Postmark Games, which Jamie actually has in her hand. Looks like right now. Both fantastic, and a big fan of both of them. Highly recommend them. I can recommend them so easily because they're so easy to get to. Just go Google it, go look it up. You can get to their website. I know you can.
Unbelievable deal. I mean, for $5, you can't beat it.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of boards. Each of them now have at least 3 or 4, maybe 5 officially created boards by the designers. But the thing that they've done in both of these games is they've made the assets available to anyone. And so then if you go to the Discord to Postmark Games, you'll see there's literally dozens of boards that other people have put together and new rules they've come up with. And it's just kind of become its own little, almost a Minecraft type thing in the print and play space. So yeah, highly recommend it. I'll buy every $5 print and play that Postmark ever puts out because it's been such a good deal. Probably I would say my definitely best value in games in 2022 was, for me at least, Aquamarine. again, I'm not talking about gameplay much. This is kind of a polyomino. So you roll your dice, you draw a polyomino. In this case, you're diving down into the depths, and the further you dive down, the more likely you are to get certain things. You want to get things like fish. You want to avoid things like the jellyfish that might hurt you, I think, or the sharks. I might be getting that a little bit wrong, but you get the idea. Some things are good to kind of keep in your polyomino. Thing has to be connected all the way down. You get to do 3 different dives. You're essentially scuba divers diving down into the depths. But yeah, very, very fun, very cool. And again, that like fun per dollar there's probably not a game this higher on my list than
you could
Aquamarine.
buy it for $5, play it once, and you get tremendous value for your $5. Like you're not going to play it once, though. That's my thing. You're not going to just play it once. And it was well designed. And as you are going down, I'll note, I really love that it becomes harder to, you're spending more of your essentially oxygen as you're going down. You're trying to fill in all the gaps, all the spaces around certain things like the ships. There's all these different scoring mechanisms that are built in, and they vary with each build of this game. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. I love this pick. And I will note just with this pick as I close this out here, I'll note that if I see their name on something, I'm automatically interested now, which is a wonderful that speaks very positively to my experience with anything they also had done. On it's slipping my mind. I'm looking behind me. I don't see it, but they had also done some other games, Matthew in particular, that have kind of been high on my list in the past year. So kudos, great pick. And yeah, Mr. Out Gaming, by the way, confirming here, I concur that Aquamarine is super awesome. Good pick. I will say hello, by the way. It looks like we mentioned it before. DNex is in the house. We also got Board Game Dads in the house, and of course, Mr. Out Gaming, as we just shown. So we got.
I missed the crowd. So yeah, hi to Sky and Riley. Just saw you guys were both there. Hey to Rachel. Danny's in as well. I know there's other people too that I'm probably missing. So yeah, thanks for thanks for joining.
Danielle was great. Danielle popped. By the way, Danielle will have her own list that will drop towards the end of the month for everybody. With that, Brian, we will jump to your number 17. It sounds like $5 is a deal for your number 18. Let's check out what your number 17 is, as it looks like it's another small one, but I'd say fair to say challenging one.
Oh yeah. So Sprawopolis. This is a button shy game. And I love button shy so much. So one of the themes you're going to see from me today too is what can people do with severely limited components? And so Roll and Write is a type of game I like a lot partially for that reason. They also tend to be easy games to teach if they're smaller and just have less going on. Sometimes that you'll see later too. Sometimes there's big games in small boxes. So that's another category that interests me a lot. Button shy games, if you're not familiar, are 18 card games that fit in little wallets. And these have become increasingly important to me in the last year. I recently moved from Seattle across the water. So I live west of Puget Sound now, in another town. And I actually take a ferry for my commute. And this ferry has some seats that have a little table. And so if I can get the table seat on our little commuter ferry, I get a half hour to sit at a table on my way from my home to Seattle when I commute to work. I only commute to the office once or twice a week, but when I do, these games, little wallet games, are perfect. So I almost always have 4, 5, 6 at least button shy games in my backpack all the time. They're fantastic to pull out. Sprawopolis is a city building game. Also, speaking of my day job, I'm a traffic engineer by day, and pretty good at my job, pretty terrible at Sprawopolis, to be quite honest. And so, but I have a great time playing this game. It's essentially, you can see there, in this case, 3 of those cards are the scoring conditions for this particular game. On the backs of all the other cards are 15 more scoring conditions. So you shuffle the deck, you pull 3 conditions randomly. This is how you're going to score your points for that game. And then the other 15 cards are your deck, and you pull those one at a time. This is either a solo or a 2-player co-op game. I've almost exclusively played it solo. So you have, I think I have 3 cards in my hand at any given time, and you build this city, essentially. You can see there's 4 different colors or 4 different types of quadrants, kind of like SimCity, if anybody ever played that. Might be dating myself now, but And the idea is you've got parks, industry, etc. I forget the name, all 4 of them exactly. You're trying to do things like reduce the number of different roads. You want to try to connect the roads together. You want to try to make groups of the same type. So you want to have all your parks together. You want to have as many of your blues, your grays together as you can. And so that provides points. And then, of course, these 3 scoring conditions. So some things are the same points every game. And then these 3 scoring conditions give you those unique ways to score on that specific game. So I've literally never played the exact same game of Sprawopolis 3 times, even in terms of the rule set, right? There's randomness of course, the order the cards come up for you when you play. But even more important than that, at the very beginning, there's a randomness of what is the exact combination of 3 cards for you to score. One more part of my monologue here is there's also lots of expansions. There's little bitty mini expansions. Button Shy often does anything from literally a 1 card to a 3 card mini expansion sometimes. This game also has 2 larger expansions. There's one called Agricola, which is farm-based. It is a standalone game, but also has a card that allows you to put the 2 together. And there's the newest version called Naturopolis, which is similar ideas. Both of these 2 introduce some new concepts. They're a little bit harder, a little bit more complex.
Harder?
And then, yeah.
Yeah. This game's harder. This game's hard as it is. The
tough.
fact it gets harder. Ryan had said this earlier. It's one game I'm so beyond awful and I have no clue how to improve. And that's kind of how I feel. It's such a tough game, but I love what it like. I love like I said, I do love these small games that you can bring with you. And I appreciate this game a lot. My scores are not very good in this game. So I will own that right now.
Very good. Mr. Rao, I need you to send me a direct message somewhere. I've actually done some reviews. I've got some prototype versions of a couple of these games. I'll drop in an envelope for you.
Brian, you convinced me to buy Battlecrest. I've already played Sprawopolis by way of Arwen. I think over a year ago at this point, and I loved it, but I've just never gotten around to buying it. The only Button Shy games I own literally never leave my side. I bring them with me everywhere. In Vino Morte and both Battlecrests. Rachel carries Tussie Mussie. My partner Rachel carries Tussie Mussie with her everywhere. We love Button Shy. So, but you have to get some sort of kickback from them or something, specifically just for me, because every time you talk about a Button Shy game, I'm like, damn, I need to go buy it.
Now, those guys treat me well. I often get to see things early and get to provide some feedback on their games, which has been great. They are in New Jersey too, so anybody local to the Tabletop headquarters or Tabletop Express headquarters, yeah, keep an eye out. And every once in a while, I've noticed about once a year, they're doing little get-togethers around the country. I think they've been to Nashville. I think this year they're maybe in Minneapolis or somewhere, but they're doing little Button Shy events, and they keep them very small. They limit them to like 100 people, which is a very Button Shy thing to do, is keeping things small, and they just play games all weekend. So they
could keep it down to 18 and be really on theme. That would be true. There wouldn't be a lot of people there, I guess. Then,
yep,
very on brand.
It will be on.
Yep. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, big 2 thumbs up for anything Button Shy. I haven't loved every single game, but I've liked every game I've tried. I have a bunch of them. And
Board Game Dad does ask, do you know where in Jersey where they are based? Obviously, we are Jersey, so I don't know if you know where exactly in Jersey they're based out of. But
no, I thought it was all just one place, so I can't speak to that.
Sounds good. Well, we'll have to look that one
we'll
up.
find it. We'll hunt them down. Yeah.
We'll hunt them down. Yeah. Well, in the meantime, let's figure out what your number 16 is. See, I really enjoy this because I get to click all these buttons. Normally Ryan gets to do this. And it looks like, oh, this is a good one. Looks like we got Clank Legacy Acquisitions Incorporated. That's your number 16.
Yeah, maximize this one. This one did drop down my list quite a bit. And if you notice, we hadn't even talked about that. If you look in the top corner there, you'll see where I might have had this ranked in 2022 when I did my list. Yep. If I had it ranked. A lot of these are new. And the only reason this one dropped is that I played it before the pandemic and had a fantastic time. Still one of my favorite game experiences. I haven't played it, of course, again since then. And because it's a legacy game, I think it's going to be hard for it to stay on the list very long, right? Because I'm not going to go back to it. I do like Clank in general. I've played this one, Clank Legacy. I've played and have the space. Oh, I can't believe I forgot the name of it. Clank in Space.
There you go. That's
Ryan,
exactly how it's supposed to be said.
Yeah, we speak punctuation on the Tabletop Express.
Oh no,
As it should be.
Clank itself is such a it is a great series. This one I've only done I think the first scenario in, and then that game was semi abandoned. So I need to return to it. But I love the Clank system, and Legacy was very promising when I played that first scenario. So I was left with a very positive first impression, despite only playing one game of this so far.
I hope in admitting this, I don't forfeit any future invites back to the Tabletop Express, but I've actually never played any Clank games, and I've heard nothing but amazing things about it. So it saddens me that I haven't, but I'm excited to hear your thoughts about it.
We all have big gaps.
Yeah.
Plenty of big gaps in my own experience for sure. But no, I think they're fun. It's basically taking the basic deck builder and putting it on a board. And so now we're not too dissimilar from Aquamarine. There's a theme here. You're diving as deep as you can to get the best treasure. But then in this case, you've got to get yourself back out while the dragon chases you. Of course, Clank comes from the classic Lord of the Rings moment where Pippin drops the bucket down the well and brings all the orcs to them. And so every time that you trip and you produce Clank, it's a bag. You're actually making it easier for the dragon to then kill one or more of you in a future draw of that bag. Really fun, really cool. And I thought the story in Clank Legacy was quite good. It's actually the only Legacy game I've played, so I can't compare it to things like Pandemic, Legacy, etc. But for the experience that I had, we played it 3-player and mostly played it week to week. We had a couple of skips, but we definitely kind of busted through it on a Friday night. Probably played our 10 or 11 games in about 14 or 15 weeks. And so that's, I think, the way to go with most of the Legacy games. If you can just like crank it out where you don't have to relearn the rules, I think that can be of benefit.
And I will note, this was your number 6 last year.
It was. I played a lot of good games in the last year. So
Sprawopolis was your number 12 last year. So Sprawopolis and Clank both dropped a little bit, but to your point, a Legacy game that I could play again, I find that more likely to drop off a list than per se Sprawopolis, because simply put, it's a Legacy game, and if you don't play it again, well, kind of hard to keep it there, I guess.
Yeah, I noticed Riley makes a good point too about it is kind of a semi-co-op to some degree. I mean, it technically is competitive, but you can kind of choose how cooperative in some ways you kind of want to win together, but it's also okay to like leave behind somebody. In some ways, on the Legacy side, you could imagine it kind of makes things fun in a different way. Kind of like an RPG. Sometimes it's fun to fail in D&D, right? It's makes the story interesting as well. And the same can be said for Clank Legacy.
Yeah, and to what you said earlier, Jimmy, a lot of people, I read the first time I played Clank, it was a Clank in space. I bought it immediately afterwards.
Wait a minute. What was it, Chris? What was it called?
Clank in space.
Sorry, yeah, I couldn't understand what you were saying.
Yeah,
for a minute.
Yeah.
Never heard of that game.
Yeah, but I could tell you that they're all very different experiences, but all great experiences in their own right. Legacy might be the best one, but I haven't played more than one scenario. Hard to say.
I've heard great. Before we go on, I've heard amazing things about Catacombs. This is the newest version of Clank. And I believe somebody might know way more than me, but I think you build the map and stuff as you play. So it makes it a little bit different, where the other ones you can kind of see where the things are.
That's kind of a game changer for that one, because that one had a lot of expansions already, but that's a complete game changer to make you actually change the map as you go. It's not some kind of set thing. So that sounds interesting. Yeah. Well, besides Ryan telling me that punctuation matters, thanks for that. What I think it's time for is to check on your number 15. So I get to click the magic 15 button, and we got a game I'm very familiar with. We got Rolling Realms by Jamie Stegmaier, Stonemaier Games. That's a 2021 game, and last year was 16 on your list. It's moved up a spot, it appears.
It has. One reason for that could be that it keeps getting better because it keeps growing. It's in some ways, a game that will never end, I think, as long as Stonemaier Games keeps making their own games and has partnerships with others. They're going to keep making more little, what do they call them, promos for Rolling Realms. So a very quick story on this game. This is another roll and write game. You can see you actually write on the cards. Rolling Realms was a COVID game. So Jamie actually designed this during 2020 and had a lot of streams where I played a lot of the kind of little print and play version of this, including promos. Every week it was a new version because they would have new ideas or new updates, or there'd be a rules change or whatever over time. So over the course of really, it felt like almost a year, we were playing Rolling Realms almost every week in a little bit of a different version of Rolling Realms, which is really fun. Just to be part of a community that was playing a game, especially during the middle of COVID, where it was so difficult to play much of anything else. And so it's really fun. You can see 3 of these different realms. Each of the realms originally was one of the Stonemaier titles. So there's a Scythe realm, there's a Viticulture realm. Since then, there's a Tapestry realm. And they're all themed to those games. If you look really close on the far right of the screen, the Tapestry realm looks like your Tapestry city map if you've played that game. And then the other one, similarly, the Viticulture one, you're actually making wine, things like that. Since then, there's become a Rolling Realms realm, which is very meta and fun. And then they've also expanded outwards. So there's a Feast for Odin realm. There's a Honeybuzz realm. So they've made some deals with other publishers as well. And similar to, we talked about Aquamarine earlier, there are literally dozens of fan-created realms as well that a lot of people.
That's why I had to bring this up, Brian, because Ryan was asking about that as if there's still custom content. And yeah, I mean, yeah, it's been kind of cool to see what people came up with.
And some of those, Jamie has actually played them and then worked with those folks and the publisher, and they've kind of become part of making some of the real ones, from what I understand. I haven't tracked all of the player generated or, kind of user generated content. But I don't even know how many. I think I do have them all so far. I try to keep up. Sometimes I mess up. I've actually bought Terra Mystica twice because I didn't remember that I had it. So that happens, but they only cost $5 at a time. And you're usually adding them to, or I'm adding them to another bigger order that I'm making with Stonemaier anyway. And so, just great game. Really cool little solo mode that's kind of set up like a mini golf course. So there's 18 different challenges, which are different mixes of the different cards, or maybe makes up some other weird rule. Like, I don't know, you're only rolling 1 die, or you're only doing something, or you have to get X number of stars. And so that's been a really fun challenge to play through that.
The solo mode was mentioned earlier. Rachel had said great solo mode. Danielle had agreed on that one. And I will say the one thing about that solo mode, there was one of the modes where I remember you had to get 6 stars. Maybe it was on the Scythe one or something, but like you had to get 6 stars on the Scythe one regardless. And then the rest of it really didn't matter outside of the score. But that's what made it challenging, because you had to so focus on that. And so it was very well designed, that golf course kind of piece. I would love another round of golf available for people who had all the promos. Like, I feel like you could say, here's course number 2, but I did enjoy that. This was on my list, I know, last year. I think it was around the same kind of spot as you on my list last year.
Nice. Yeah, I anticipate it being pretty evergreen because it's just going to continue. I mean, I can't imagine not putting in another $5 to grab the next promo anytime I'm buying something else from Stonemaier or, yep.
Have you played this one, Jamie, at all?
I'm not, but I'm quickly adding it to my list. The amount of tabs that I have open right now is slowly growing. So I might have 20 by the end of I'm just it'll be close to that, I'm sure, though.
Yeah, it will continue to grow too, and I know as they add the other games. I mean, I don't know what the end looks like for that one.
I trust Brian's taste, frankly. So
it's a good one.
As you're starting to see, and you're going to see this entire, tableau that we lay out today, is I have a particular bent, right? There are certain things that I like. You can see so far, relatively light to medium weight games, right? And that's, see if they get too much heavier as we go up. There might be 1 or 2, but.
And I like to do
not yet.
I like to do solo content when I can on stream. So keeping an eye out for that kind of stuff is like, I'm there for it. Here.
Yeah. I'm a big solo player. So you're going to see almost everything you'll see on this list is probably solo-able in some way, either officially or unofficially.
Before we go to year number 14, I will note with Rolling Realms in particular, because people could play along with you based on if they have the stuff, it offers a lot of great option for streaming. and that was one of the reasons that it played so well during the pandemic, as it was kind of designed with the community. Though I don't think your number 14 is really probably. I think it falls in that same category of that kind of lighter, fun.
Another light rolling right. So here we go. Yeah, Super Skill Pinball is just fantastic. This, if there's a game that just does the thing that it's supposed to do, playing Super Skill Pinball feels like you're playing pinball. And I'm no like pinball wizard, but I did grow up in that age, so I have played some pinball in the 80s as a kid. But no, it's just great. And this is from Jeff Engelstein. If anybody knows Jeff, I've never met him in person, but he's super personable online and very, very quick to answer rules questions on Twitter. I'll sometimes ask him directly if I run into something weird, or especially early on before there were as many FAQs and discussion boards on this. But yeah, you roll 2 dice and then you're doing the things that you do on a pinball board. There's really not a whole lot else to it, but there's so many different boards now. There's 4 in the base game. This actually my favorite one is called Cyber Hack. It's got a really interesting little, what is that thing called? The back glass of a pinball machine. So each of them has the main board, which you can see part of that on the left. And then the back glass is usually some kind of a special like side game or bonus game, mini game. That is, you can see in this case, it's over on the right. You can set these up whatever way you want. But right now there's 4 different games. And this one of them is like a D&D fantasy style. That's really interesting. There's a second version or a second, whatever edition that has 4 games that are also, generic, or they're not IP based. And then there is a Star Trek one that's 4 different boards that are all based on the Star Trek IP. And then there is a Christmas one that's based on 4 different Christmas movies, and I forget exactly what they are.
National Lampoon is one of them.
Elf, something else.
By the way, comment from Sky that he's also super nice in person too. So always great to hear when we talk about a great game that the folks behind it are also great people.
Yeah, Jeff's awesome. He was on Ludology podcast for a long time. If you never listened to the Ludology podcast, it's got a rotating group. Emma Larkins has been on there for a year or 2. And it continues to be fantastic. So I would highly recommend Ludology and highly recommend Super Skill Pinball.
Which, by the way, was your number 10 last year. So it's dropped slightly, but
a little. I told you, I played a lot of new games. So yeah.
That one sounds similar in concept to, have you gotten to try Retrograde from Resonim yet?
I have not.
So it's a heads-up roll and write that is based on old school arcade cabinets, kind of like, I'm trying to think of like Galaga, kind of, or, the Space Invaders, rather. It's really interesting to have like an actual real-time roll and write, and it sounds frantic. But the pacing of it is nice enough that it doesn't feel stressful. It's still very fun and fast paced in the way that an arcade cabinet kind of is. It's really, really neat what they did with it. And if you like Super Skill, I think you should check it out if you get a chance.
Fantastic. Thanks.
The most dangerous thing about these top 20s is I think the carts fill up with great games. I did.
That's the beauty of doing mine is I'm not adding these games to my list because I'm pretty sure I own most of all the ones.
But there's 4 more on this channel. That's all I'm going to say.
I know.
I will say, Board Game Dads did chime in that the Christmas is 3 boards. It's Christmas Story, Elf, and National Lampoon.
Oh, good. Thanks, Anthony. Yeah.
So there we go.
I've not played that one. Oh, there is a secret Christmas one that came out as a free promo a couple years ago, called Reindeer Games. You just have to kind of Google around. I think it might be on BGG. That one's also fun. It's got a couple weird typos. I asked Jeff about that last holiday season because I was trying to find a real one. I actually it's a great game and I wish it was fixed, but alas, it was only like a free promo a couple years ago and they haven't actually, but that should be the 4th game in the Christmas set. So it's kind of weird that they didn't add a 4th one.
Well, we won't go to number 4 yet, but we will go to your number 13. Let's see what it is we got. And you mentioned Marvel Champions before, and I know you haven't played it, but I know I've heard you talk about Legendary a Marvel deck building game, which was your number 11 last year, sits here at number 13 in 2023.
Yeah, what a fun game. This is really old, right? This, I think, is from 2012 originally. They continue to produce content for this game. This is a co-op deck builder, very basic. You get your cards. You either have cards that help you buy stuff or cards that help you attack the bad guy. It's, there are several games like this out, but this was one of the early ones, coming relatively soon after Dominion, to one, put a license on it, and two, make it co-op. And so I find it really fun. It's not perfect. It's a semi co-op. And so there's some cards that allow you to like get points. And if you kill more people than your co-op partner, then of course you're trying to win, but you're trying to win-win. And I'm not a big fan of that. So we tend to never play with those rules. We just don't really pay attention to that because I like just straight co-op better. I played this one mostly 2-player and 3-player. Sometimes we'll play it 2-handed solo. It plays solo just fine. I'm not sure if Riley's still on. I know Riley Stock played a ton of this game when it was out for real 10 years ago. I guess it is still out for real. I shouldn't say that. It is still a current game. It's published by Upper Deck. And yeah, I probably would agree once I play it that Marvel Champions is likely objectively better. But one thing I really do tend to like deck builders more than deck constructors, even though I had Pokemon on my list. These days, maybe I'm just getting older. I just like to play a lot of different games, but I don't really like to spend a ton of time with deck construction or with metagame or dealing with, all that stuff. So the fact that everything's in the box, infinite replayability of this game. You can mix up the bad guy and the stuff and things. You can mix up the different heroes that you put in your deck. I think you picked 3 of them, but it's really, really cool. Yeah. Thanks, Riley. I knew this was kind of your gateway into this whole thing. Yeah, it's been fun. I don't play it a ton, but it's definitely become my go-to co-op game. Also has an interesting art style. I don't know how much you can see the cards here, but is it a different, probably more comic booky? I'm not a comic guy, so correct me if I'm way off there, but it feels more comic than MCU, if that makes sense. And I think it's just kind of an interesting take on the art for these characters that is almost like what they looked like before we started making all the movies, if that makes sense.
I think it's fair because Marvel Champions sometimes they are taking from like comic looks, but some of the takes, I think it's more of it. It's at times I've seen them timed with comic stuff or with movie stuff. So that might be true. But I think that because the movies weren't a thing, they're definitely always probably tied to comics because that was what they had to work off of. It wasn't really
well, and they alongside. I'm sorry, they've made expansions alongside. So there's definitely like an MCU heavy expansion that came out a few years later.
There's a Spider-Man one too, wasn't there? Like with a bunch of a Spider-Verse. So
there's some, there's kind of everything now because it's been out for a decade, right? So then they've continued to make content every year for it. As Ryan mentioned, expansions definitely are a must. The base game is pretty base. And so we do have at least one of the first ones that came out. I'm actually going to look at it. It's called Dark City. That's, I think, the first main expansion. I've actually heard that base game plus Dark City is essentially like really the base game. So if you're going to get into it, I would keep that one in mind. Some of the older stuff is hard to find. Yeah. The base game you can find. The Dark City expansion, at least the time I got it, I had to find some random friendly game store in Nevada or something, shipped it to me. But I had trouble finding it. So I don't know that that's the case all the time, but yeah, it's fun. I don't even know. It's kind of weird. It's like, I don't even know that I would recommend it to other people necessarily. If you haven't played it, or if you do play like Champions or something, or if you have a deck builder like it that you like, an Eon's End or something, this might not be for you, but I think if you haven't got into that, I think it's worth a try. It's fun.
And you said it's pre-constructed?
Yeah, everything's pre-constructed.
How would you compare it to something like, have you played Sentinels of the Multiverse?
I haven't, but I know of it. I think there's some similarities.
Okay, cool.
I know with Legendary, you take 3 heroes, you choose 3 heroes, and you mix all their cards together.
Cool.
And then that becomes the deck. And so it's kind of interesting in that, especially if you play 2-player, you're kind of deciding, oh, they're going to lean more Rogue, I'm going to lean more Spider-Man. But you also won't necessarily be able to make perfect choices like that, right? So
Right.
yeah, it's fun.
It's interesting. Like I said, I think there's been that debate now since Ronald Tabor's out, but they're very different games. That's the thing that I keep saying whenever people bring it up. I might prefer one over the other. I think I sold my copy, but I also would only play the core version of this. I didn't play with the others, so I would probably enjoy it more with those expansions based on what everyone is saying. But I will again repeat, that was your number 11 last year. It's dropped to 13. We'll find out what your number 11 was in a moment, but first we got to find out what your number 12 is. So let's discover that first. And it looks like, and I knew this would be on your list. It's the Lord of the Rings trading card game.
So excited to talk about this game.
This was your number 1 last year, by the way.
This was my number 1 last year. It was highly nostalgic for that to be my number 1. I have maybe only played it once or twice at the last year, which is why it's dropped down. Part of that, I will say, well, let me back up. So we're gonna tell some story about this game, and then we might need to zip through a few to not keep people here for 3 hours. The year was 2001. The Lord of the Rings movie series was coming out that Christmas, and then the next 2 movies, the 2 subsequent years. We had a 10-month-old, 11-month-old in our house, and we were young parents, and had a friend who introduced this game to me. He played what was called a Hobbit stealth deck, which is you take the hobbits and you just kind of hide them away. The beauty of this game is you're playing both the Fellowship and the Shadow, or the bad guys, and your job and your opponent's job. This is still a head-to-head Pokemon Magic the Gathering, head-to-head TCG. Definitely buying packs, spending way more money than you should as a 25-year-old young adult with a baby on Lord of the Rings cards. But you do what you do. And you're taking your Fellowship through. It's a racing game in that you're trying to get your Fellowship through before your opponent gets their Fellowship through. And there's 9 different sites essentially that you're going through that matches up to the first film. In this version, they of course expanded that, and there's a 2 Towers version. It's a TCG, right? So new decks are out every 3 months and all that good stuff. Here's like the hook of this game is when I play out these cards, you look in front of me, I've got Frodo, Legolas, Arwen, Aragorn, and Haldir. That's a beefy team. To get out that beefy team, I had to put a lot of mana, or we call it Twilight, into the pool. And then that gave my opponent a lot of mana to use to put their bad guys out onto the table. So the beauty of this game is however I choose to bulk up my team during my Fellowship turn, that's how much mana I'm giving my opponent to try to beat me up or slow me down during the Shadow phase. It's just brilliant. It's been very rare that I've seen any other games even try to do it. I know I talked about this ad nauseum a year ago. I'll talk about it ad nauseum a year from now because you all didn't hear me, all of you, a year ago. This is one of the best games I've ever played. Also, even though it didn't get me back into the hobby, it was 17 years before I really started playing hobby games again. It did get me to playing. I went every Friday night for several months to a little game store in Columbia, Missouri called Valhalla's Gate, playing card games with people who I didn't know. And I had such a fun time. And it opened up my eyes to this idea of let people love what they love, right? It was so cool. These were different people from different places that I didn't know anything about their lives between the times that we played on Friday nights. I did have some in real life friends who also played this game, which was nice, but it was just cool. It was just a great experience. It's a great game. I'm a kind of Tolkien nerd. And so but this is part of the reason I am. I wasn't really a Tolkien nerd before I played this game and got into the movies and then read the books. But this was really probably my gateway into Tolkien was this game. So it's probably another reason it definitely have a soft spot for it. It is fantastic.
Ryan chiming in saying he wants to play this one, and he also wants to follow up with Sakura Arms because that hook sounds similar to him. And I do like that hook. I do like that balance that you describe in this one. I used to play Star Wars, the customizable card game. That was kind of my game before I played a lot of the games later on. And I think the only hook I had with that was the theme. That I loved Star Wars. So That was my hook. To have an
Yeah.
actual mechanical hook to me is really nice to hear.
And I would say the pure version of this is the Fellowship of the Ring and its expansions. Once I got into the Two Towers, and then we added the Ents, and then we got into the Return of the King, it definitely bloated like a lot of TCGs do. It didn't last that long. Once you got past the IP movies and stuff, probably by 2004, 2005, it was kind of mostly dead. Decipher ended up going out of business. It wasn't the best story overall, but yeah, I just have such fond memories of the beginning of that, right? I've loved the beginning of things, and the year of playing that game was just fantastic.
It's the frustrating part with all those IP based like games that have a long life to them. There's a similar thing happening with the Song of Ice and Fire board game / war game, where they've kind of run through a lot of the content that was in the TV shows, and they're tapping a lot of the stuff that's in the books, which is still very cool, but also pretty out there for anyone who hasn't read them and are used to like a lot of the more terrestrial things that are occurring in the show. And so it's very interesting to see people's reactions to some of the things that they're adding, and they're like, wait, is this really something that happens? It's like, yeah, I mean, it's just very different.
And these kind of things, because I love Marvel Champions, but the thing I note with Marvel Champions as kind of a game, as you were talking about Legendary before, is ultimately I could build those decks and have anyone else come to the table. A game like this, which is a trading card game, when the cards are no longer out there, they're no longer out there. And if someone doesn't have the cards, you got to bring them to the table and have someone construct with it. So it's a different ball game altogether. But I know I've heard you talk about this one. I love Lord of the Rings, so I put myself in the category of I would love to play this with you sometime and appreciate your passion and interest in this one.
And real quick, last thing on that one. I know I keep adding one more thing, but some people have kept this up. There's like a passionate, kind of like the people who keep up, what is that game? Netrunner, which I have on my shelf, but I've never played, but it's kind of in a similar vein. There was some events this last year, or maybe it was in late 21 for the 20th anniversary. The guys at, Rolling Dice and Taking Names, those guys are actually fans of this game, so they'll talk about it every once in a while. So there's a little like hub community around. So yeah, that's a good one. Lord of the Rings trading card game. Here we go.
Well, we mentioned this before. Your number 13 this year was your number 11 last year. Its replacement is it's a good one. Abandon All Artichokes. I'm a Larkins designer on this one, by the way, and this was your 19th pick last year. So number 19. So this has moved up your list.
It has, partially because I play this one a lot. This is a multiplayer game. I haven't figured out a solo mode for it, but it'd be fun to try. Abandon All Artichokes is just so clever. It's just cute. It's called a deck wrecking or deck destroying game. You start with, somebody tell me, 8 artichokes in your hand. Your entire
artichokes, but don't quote me on it because I haven't played in a few months.
The entire purpose of the game is to draw up at the end of your turn and have 0 artichokes. And so there's so many ways to do that. One is you could have no cards in your hand, right? You would have no artichokes. One is you have a bunch of other vegetables in your hand and no artichokes. I'm particularly bad at this game. My wife destroys me this game regularly. This is another one that we will play on if we take the big ferry and we're kind of sitting across from each other. It's been a ferry game in the past. It's an easy one to take with you. You saw it does come in a tin. I'll sometimes just stick it in as a Ziploc bag if I'm going to carry it somewhere. The tin is cute enough that I keep it. Oh yeah, it has a BGA implementation as well. But no, just great. Emma is here in the Seattle area, and I've had a chance to talk with her specifically about the game. I think there might be something coming down the line. She had some ideas that didn't make it into the base game, that even though there are a couple promo cards, I think if you know where to look, I haven't actually looked hard enough to find them, but I think there might be a couple others potentially coming down the line. So yeah, it's again, one of those games. It's like 100 cards and just super simple and cute. And it does the thing it does. It adds fun. And maybe too, I hadn't really talked about where these folks are from. That might be my first Seattle designer, but spoiler alert, it will not be my last.
It It is also a game that is really easy to teach, and I find most people can learn it. So it's extremely approachable as a game. So I love I first played this, I think, online, and then ended up buying a copy for like, I got it for like $6 at Kohl's somehow. Don't know how it was that cheap, but it was a steal as far as I was concerned.
It does show up everywhere. Yeah,
it fits into that category that's just like a little bit bigger than a button shy game, but definitely can still fit in a bag, like a backpack game. I usually call them. Like Hive is one of those that's always in my backpack. I bring it with me everywhere. It's like it's one of those you can just break out like at any moment, and be ready.
Yeah, I appreciate this one quite a bit. And I appreciate the fact that we are now about to enter your top 10. So these are Brian Chandler's top 10 games right now on your mind, and let's break it out. Let's crack it and get right into number 10, which is, if there was a drum roll sound on my cue, I would play it. But we got a popular Stonemaier game for your number 10. It was your number 9 last year, and that's Viticulture. And I like that you note this Essential Edition, because that is the essential version to have for many reasons, not just the name.
Yeah, Viticulture is just fantastic. It's a classic worker placement game from Stonemaier. One of the first. I think it actually might be their second game ever. Jamie's second design. You're making wine. It's another game kind of like Super Skill Pinball in a way, in that it does what you do. You're running a vineyard and you're making wine, and that's the point of this game. A couple of things. Oh, I guess I should caveat this one. I actually worked on Viticulture World, the last expansion. I was a proofreader on that game, so I should probably, I guess, whatever, disclaimer, blah, blah, blah. And continue to do work for Stonemaier. So if you see another Stonemaier game, then you take that with a grain of salt. I will tell you, I make no money off that. I got paid up front. I'm a work for hire, so you buying more Viticulture World doesn't necessarily help me out in any financial way. But it's just fun. It's just a good, fun game. I think I've said that like 100 times already in the last hour, but it's got a good solo mode in the base game, and the Viticulture World solo mode is even better, in my opinion. And the Tuscany expansion for me is a must now. I don't ever play without it. That kind of expanded from having really 2 main turns or 2 main seasons every year into having all 4 seasons. So for me, I recommend definitely Viticulture plus Tuscany. I actually recommend learning base Viticulture first. I still think that's the best way to learn. Tuscany does add a weird little area majority thing that's fine, but I don't really necessarily love it. But I do love the fact that you have something to do in all 4 seasons. It adds a little more flexibility. Viticulture World does all kinds of cool new stuff, and I won't get into all that, but it does make it co-op. It also expands or changes the solo play, as mentioned, and does a little bit of you can change out some of the things you do by placing these tiles on some of the items too. It's just each one does make it a little more complicated though. So I would still recommend. I mean, we played base Viticulture for a while and had plenty of fun with that before we even added an expansion. And I think there's a lot of fun to be had. There's a couple little expansions too that essentially I think mostly just add new cards. I actually don't have those other 2. There's 2 small ones that I've just never happened to get, but I haven't played this too much lately, frankly, but it is really good. It is not colorblind friendly, so I would highly recommend reading my article on colorblindgames.com about how I struggled with that and then what I did to actually make my copy usable for myself. So that's an issue and a need, and something that they are getting better at Stonemaier Games, but this one definitely has some issues on the color front.
I will note, we do have a review copy of the co-op expansion that will come to the table for us by May, is I believe our goal. So we'll be covering that on the channel. I'll note I played this, first time I played this, I think was at Anthony, who's a co-conductor on Channel Now's house, and I enjoyed this quite a bit. It's definitely a classic worker placement at this point. I like the thematic of it. I like any game that I can pair really well with that theme that plays to it. And you could pair. I know Ryan was joking, but you could pair this with a Chardonnay and play a game, and it would work, right? So I do like games that can do that. I'm kind of a sucker for a good theme that plays well. And then as you add some of the other cards and again, more seasons, I think that does add a balance. I agree with you on Tuscany. That was really what I was thinking about the entire time we were talking at the start was, but we need that Tuscany expansion. I think in the long run, you do need that.
It brings more life to the game. It can get a little samey. I think it can get a little samey for any gamer that if you play the thing 6 times, I think if you play the thing 6 times, you'll really appreciate what Tuscany does, which I think is valuable too. So in some ways I would recommend playing base game first a little bit to also make sure you like it, right? I'm generally a fan of don't buy an expansion until you know you like the base game. Now I don't always preach I don't always practice what I preach, but I will say that. Jamie, have you played Viticulture?
I have. I have the base game. I've heard it's like at this point, if you can play it with the Tuscany expansion, that's the way to play it from what everybody tells me. I brought the base game to the table for a couple people and they were not impressed. In fact, I was told not to bring it to to my in-laws like gaming. They're not big fans of gaming in general, but I was told not to bring that kind of game to their table in terms of gaming again. But that was when I started to realize like what sort of games I should be bringing to that table. But that being said, I've been told that part of that reason is because Tuscany really kind of capitalized on what they were already doing with the base game. But I personally like it. I'm a big fan of worker placement in general, and I think this is like the most worker placement you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Riley, by the way, chiming in, World is hard, but I prefer playing it over competitively. And then Ryan, and I knew this, and that's why I'm so excited to play World with him. I know he hasn't been the largest fan of Viticulture, so I'm excited to bring World to the table with him. A little bit different, and then we'll definitely do that. Anthony was chiming in saying that was also the last time he remembered playing was with me as well. So we'll change that, and we'll see what we all think. Some different opinions probably to come, but
time for a change your mind episode. Haven't done one of those.
Well, we haven't done one of those since Caverna, the one and only. But I don't know if we're changing any minds with your number 9. Maybe someone has heard of it. Maybe they haven't. Let's find out what it is first, though. And that is, oh my gosh, it is number 9 at number 9.
Did you do it on purpose? He might have done that on purpose. I just love this game so much. So number 9 is a very, very basic idea. There are basically these little tiles, 0 through 9. If you go to the big screen, right, or Chris, it'll probably show up. There they are. They're just lovely. This is the simplest game. There are, let's see, you're going to end up placing 20 of these over the course of the game. They're numbered 0 through 9. There's just 2 rules. You place a little tile down, right, one of these numbers, and then the next one you place either stays on that same level, like the ground, which is anything that's on the table is worth 0. As you go up different levels, they're worth 1 point. If they're on that next level, we call it level 1, even though, level 0 is on the table. Level 1 is worth the number. Level 2 is worth double the number. Level 3 is worth triple the number. If you can ever get to number 4, you can quadruple the number. And the beauty of this game is the tiles shapes are just crazy. So you can see the 7 and the 4 in particular. You can rotate them whatever direction you want, but you cannot flip them upside down. And the placement rule is it must cover at least 2 other tiles. So for example, you couldn't just put a 7 on top of a 7 on the previous level. It has to cover 2 other tiles, and you can't cover up an open space. And so you can see in this case, you kind of end up often making kind of a pyramid towards the middle maybe, or you may have a scenario where it's a little more spread out. And it's one of those that's extremely easy to teach. I at 2 different cons in the last few months, both at Shucks in Vancouver and at OrcaCon near Seattle. I sat down with this game at the very beginning of like a free play early in the morning. I'm an early bird, so I show up when there's nobody there. I sit down with this game and I just ask somebody to come and play it. And can teach it in about 2 minutes. I just taught it to you in 2 minutes. The first time they're bad at it, like I was. And then the next time they always beat their first score in their second game. And that's the beauty of it. That's where it's just a perfect hook. It's a game you can play on a window ledge. It's a game you can play on a airplane table. It comes in a box, so you can play up to 4. And if you have 2 boxes, you can play up to 8. If you have 3 boxes, you can play up to 12. But you also can take this little pile of stuff and stick it in a Ziploc bag with the little pile of mini cards. And it's as small as a button shy game, essentially. And it also goes in my backpack when I go on trips.
And this one I've seen before but never played, so this is on my list to get to the table. If I'm playing any games that you all share in terms of the next month, this is one that I'm going to put on my priority list because I've heard great things about this, and that it just seems like a great game for families, friends, board gamers. It doesn't seem to matter. It seems like everyone would really enjoy this one. Did you play this one, Jamie? I definitely, like I said, I've just seen it from afar, I feel like.
Yeah, I've only seen this one, but I've been really intrigued by this. I don't know. Maybe I'm gonna be outing myself as like a little bit like I'm not super long in the tooth in hobby gaming, so I guess I'm kind of selling myself out here. But I have been enjoying seeing the mechanics, this kind of mechanic played around with a lot lately with the different levels. I've seen a lot in with Acropolis. That's what it was. That was a really cool way to see that utilized as well, with just the vertical, the y-axis, right? It's interesting to see that introduced in a tile placement game, whereas normally your polyominoes or your placement stuff, it's all very 2D, then you're introducing some of this other really cool stuff. It's fun. I like that we're introducing some more complexity to that,
We're getting a lot of jokes about, is it a 9-minute game? Is it a 9-hour game? What's the actual length on this one, would you say?
So it probably is about 9 to 15. Like it's about a 10 to 15 minute game. Again, depending on, it's not everybody plays simultaneously. The thing that's cool about it too is you flip a card, everybody plays that same card, but after about 3 turns, even if you're kind of looking at each other, people don't play the same. I've never had a scenario where you end up with anything close to the same as an opponent, even though you're playing the exact same cards in the exact same order. It's really interesting that way. I think to your point too, Jamie, on that 3D, one thing I find in that y-axis, it is really hard to get those games right in any kind of online. You can't really play this game on BGA. It probably isn't even on BGA. There is something about being able to feel and see that kind of third dimension to be able to really get it. And that's frankly why I play board games. I've actually played a lot less BGA even in the last couple months than I played last year. And I don't know all the reasons for that, but I've just really liked the tactile nature of this hobby. And I haven't played nearly as much online as most of the people on the stream right now or in the Discord have, partially because I just want to feel these components and I want to put them on the table. And I think some of it might be that third dimension. And I've even heard there's a bit of a gap right now in that because a lot of games were designed in Tabletop Simulator during the pandemic. And so it's hard to design a game that's not just flat and 2-dimensional in Tabletop Simulator or any of those tools. And so I'm hoping there'll be a renaissance of more kind of vertical components, with lack of a better term, in the future.
I'm wondering then if we see games in that format, those ones that are really great in terms of that feel and aesthetic look to the table, as we go into your top 8. We're down to 8, and we're going to drop into your number 8 right now, and that is one we were talking about this recently. This is Fleet the Dice game. You were at number 14 with this last year. It has moved up to your number 8.
It has moved up, and interestingly, I haven't even played it that much more. I think I told this story last year. I got this game for Christmas 2021, and by the end of 2021, it was in my top 10 games played for the entire year. So I played it that much during the holiday season. This is one of the kind of now trilogy of beefier or 2-sheet roll and writes by the guys' names that I can't read, Ben and Matt. Riddle. That's right, Pinchback and Riddle.
Matt Riddle.
3 Sisters would be the second of the series, I guess, whatever. And then Motor City, which just came out this year, is the third. I still think I like Fleet the best. In fact, I do like Fleet the best because you won't see the other two on my list, even though I like those other two games fine. They're not in my top 20, at least not yet. I've only played Motor City once, so it haven't quite gotten into that one to know if it captures me. I know there's plenty of people who like that one better. I do feel like they've maybe gotten a little bit more complex from game to game. I don't know if that's quite fair to say, but that's my feeling about them. And as you again can kind of see from the roll and writes that I play the most, I tend to like the quick, simple ones. And Fleet pushes that. It's definitely bigger than those, but it's enough. I just replayed this one over the weekend because I was trying to remember, like, is this really going to be in my top 10? And I like it. It's fantastic. I really, really enjoyed this game and highly recommend it, especially if you're looking at something a little bit meatier, right? You can go all the way to like a Hadrian's Wall or these gigantic roll and write games, or the Twilight Inscription, which I haven't tried yet. But this is a nice kind of middle ground. So if you've played even super simple games like Quicks or some of the other roll and writes that you saw on my list so far today, if you're ready for that next step, I think Fleet the Dice game is a really great place to go next.
Thematically, this is my favorite of the three. I won't say it's my favorite of the three from an actual gameplay perspective, but thematically, I think this one's just a joy, and I feel like you could pair it with so many other games for a game evening that you do around the theme. And some people are predicting, by the way, that there may be a crossover with you and Anthony, because Anthony says he's still making his list, but
yeah,
so
he had a very visceral reaction at first.
Yeah,
Jamie, have you played these all or some of these?
I have. So I first played Fleet, the original Fleet, and then my dad actually picked up Fleet the Dice game, and I think of all the roll and writes I owned, and I purchased everything Cartographers at the last con I was at. I think this is the one we played the most. I really like it a lot. Actually, I bought Three Sisters around the same time that we got this one, and we still play this one the most. And I think I do like it better than Three Sisters, I will say. Yeah. I love this one. I think there's still a few edge cases that we get a little bit like we get the runaround on every time we play, but it's fun. It's really interesting the way that, you know, you're filling the boats and you're filling, like, I think it's just a little bit the mechanics and the way that they work. It kind of like clicks a little bit better than Three Sisters does, in my opinion. And I just think in terms of roll and writes, the way that the engine functions is a little more controlled than I think a lot of roll and writes can get, because sometimes you're playing a roll and write and you're like, God, 3 turns ago, I completely forgot that I had a bonus, you know, that I didn't use. And now, you know, you start spiraling out of control because you're like, I completely forgot that I was supposed to do this thing. And then you know what I mean? You just kind of lose track of everything that's happening. This one, I don't feel like it gets quite that crazy, and it feels a lot better. It's a little bit more calming to play than I think a lot of roll and writes can be.
Well, Three Sisters has also a bunch of those bonuses, I know. So that might be part of it, as you mentioned, Three Sisters.
Yeah.
And again, I think there's just, even though it's more complicated, you're right. This is almost like this is a very good first next step up, roll and write into the more challenging ones. I would never jump someone right into Hadrian's Wall. I'll just say that right now. I would never jump. That would be if I introduced someone to roll and write Hadrian's Wall, they would hate me. So I would never do that.
And this still has satisfying combos. I think that's one of the beauties of roll and writes in general. You won't see Ganshan Clever on the list, but I like that game a lot. And that one is kind of the classic abstract roll and write that just combo this to that, and your purple to your orange and your green to your whatever. And this has a little bit of that. I will sometimes miss something in Fleet the Dice game and have that experience like, oh, dang it, 2 turns ago, I forgot to do my fish into my something into my whatever. But that's kind of part of playing. If you're playing solo, you can usually just cheat and back up and do it.
Well, I feel like it's a little bit easier to kind of back your way into that in a way that some of the other ones aren't. You can kind of like investigate and kind of backtrack a little bit easier than some of them.
Well, let's investigate what Brian's number 7 is, because I'm intrigued. Now we're entering a territory where I think we may start entering, and I'm not saying there hasn't been crossovers yet, but I feel like we might be entering potential crossover territory for me, simply because you've dropped some hints tonight that have given me a clue. Let's go to number 7. We've got Fantastic Factories. This was your number 5 last year. Joseph Chen, who was on Creators Corner, by the way, here on the Tabletop Express, was one of the designers of this one. Your number 5 last year. It's at number 7 this year. Hasn't dropped too far. Tell us a little bit about Fantastic Factories.
Yeah, this game is so great. So this is another Seattle designer. Joseph also self-published this game a few years ago. Fantastic Factories is a dice placement, dice manipulation game. Your dice kind of are your workers. You roll them, and then you basically are building this engine, quite literally. You're buying these different factory cards that then go into your factory of up to 10 of them. And they just do different things. And you're just constantly kind of manipulating, getting more energy and getting more ore. And it's plays very fast because it's simultaneous play. If you're playing multiplayer, there's one phase where you're buying your different buildings or things to kind of add to your tableau. That actually happens, that's not simultaneous. But then once you get into rolling the dice and placing them, that all happens at the same time, which I find really cool. It makes the game quite snappy for a game that's probably it's more on the medium side, even though it looks super light and cute. It takes a little bit of thinking. Man, what else? Great solo mode. I know, Chris, we've talked about that a lot. We both really like the solo mode for this. It's super clever and quick, and that's one of the beauties. It's one of those that focuses more on the AI isn't doing the things that a player would do, but the AI basically produces the results that another player might produce.
It's a game. You described it. I think you described it perfectly in the sense that there are a lot of thinky moments in the sense that you build up these cards that have these abilities, these factory cards that have these abilities, and you're trying to think, all right, do I want to put this on a card? Do I use this trade-in action? What do I want to actually do to accomplish my ultimate goal of producing enough or playing enough cards down? And you have some real choices in there. And you can build a real engine in this game. You're really building up that factory with an engine of cards. So I have very much enjoyed this one as well. I think I was talking to Discord about the solo mode the other day. I played a game in like 30 minutes the other day. Just ran through a game, and I had a rare 30 minutes to myself, and I took advantage and I did that. And yeah, it's a great choice. And there's 2 expansions in addition. Yeah, there's 2 expansions. In addition to the core game. The one expansion I will note, I don't know if you've played it. I didn't. I have played Manufactions, but I've not played the like the one that like has almost like take that mechanics, which it didn't speak to me with Fantastic Factories. I didn't really need that.
Yeah, one criticism is that it is a little bit multiplayer solitaire. So folks who like to have a little more player interaction, that's what it's like the subterfuge. I forget the name of the actual expansion, but it adds more of that scenario where you can kind of mess with your opponent's engine and stuff. And I haven't played that one either. Actually, I mostly play Fantastic Factory solo. So I haven't gotten into that yet, but I could see that being fun as just another alternative way to play, to give it a go. I can see people really interested in that.
I think I'm interested to hear that you said that the solo mode is as good as it is. I'm starting to piece together a theory that like Deepwater is kind of a sneaky, like kind of hero in the solo world. Like I've heard multiple people say that, and I haven't had a ton of experience with their solo stuff, but I like the way that you described that it doesn't necessarily play like a solo player, but it produces the same results. I think that's a really interesting way to look at it.
It doesn't mess with you.
Yeah,
but you are competing against it, and it's really well done in my opinion.
I feel like that's such a unique way to do it, because then it doesn't screw up your game, but it still is something that's complex and you still need to kind of consider.
Yeah, and it's kind of random, but not so random. It is a bit of a race, because in the end, you're basically trying to create these little crates. The resources are the goal, and once you create enough of the production of that stuff, that's the end of the game. You don't necessarily win if you produce the most stuff first, but that triggers the end game. And when you're playing solo, they're still doing that. And so you are racing against them to trigger the end game against the solo AI, which I really find satisfying.
And we're going to say goodbye to Espen. He's signing off. Going to watch a little bit later on, but have a good night there, Ryan. Fantastic Factories. What a great choice. A fantastic choice, I think it's fair to say. And it's a fantastic time to go to your number 6, Brian. So I'm going to go right there right now. And you've got a game on this list right here, the Red Cathedral. It's new to the list. I have it on my shelf behind me because you talked about it so much, and I was able to get it for $5 at like a steal of a price.
Oh my gosh.
Like $5-10, and I'm excited to hear more about the Red Cathedral.
This game is so cool. This one snuck up on me. So I just got this one at holiday season this last year. So this is kind of my similar story. I've only owned this game for 3 months, and it was one of my most played games of 2022. Red Cathedral, you can see the size of that box there. This is a legit Euro Rondel, what's it called? Recipe thing where you're trying to make things. What is that called? Where you're trying to essentially fulfillment. Recipe fulfillment is the term I'm trying to think of. Game that this is one of those very big games in a very small package. And so both for multiplayer, and then also has another great solo mode where you're playing against Ivan the Terrible, and Ivan is creating this temple, and then you're trying to make a temple as well. The temple there on the left side of this screen in the top left, that changes. So this happens to be one that is, too tall on the sides, and then looks like maybe 4 cards tall in the middle. There's different designs. So a little bit of randomness there. But the beauty of this game is that the dice that are on the rondel there are part of how many places you can go, but then also where you can go. And then where you go, there's different things you can do in each of these quadrants. The seasons are different. It's just really cool. It's doing a lot of things, but in a way that's really clever and very smooth. It doesn't take a lot to learn this game, and once I learned it, I just loved it. This is a game that, for those who don't know me, I have a website, colorblindgames.com, where I actually review games. This is a game that I liked it so much, I actually started writing the review like as I was playing it the first couple of times. And I actually wrote and released a review, I think, within 2 weeks of playing this game, because I liked it that much and wanted to get my thoughts on it out there, both in terms of the game, and then it had some minor color things I was able to fix really easy with a Sharpie. The green and the red dice are a little bit close for me, but that was really not a big deal at all. This is a fantastic game. Yeah, shot up into my top 10 after having never played it, except for in the last 3 months. So
I was going to remark, there's a lot in this box. Like, I just pulled this off my shelf. There's a lot.
It's dense. Yeah.
They give you a ton. I'm excited to try it. Like I said, I didn't get to. I know there's an expansion that came out as well. I'm going to obviously just try the base game first. But I'm excited to give this a go. I heard a lot about it, like I said, mostly from you. And then it was at the Barnes & Noble shelf on a clearance, and I couldn't let it go after that. So I know Ryan and I have talked about playing it, probably eventually covered on the channel simply for that reason. And yeah, I'm excited to try it. It looks really neat, and it seems like it has some really good replayability.
Yeah, I'm digging it. Jamie, have you seen this or tried it?
I've seen it. Arwen's talked a lot about it. Very, very speaks very highly about it. We haven't gotten a chance. Well, she's played it a ton. I have not gotten a chance to try it, but it's one of those. I can always tell when she talks about a game, I'm like, that's going to be one that I'm probably going to end up buying. Just like the way that she talks about it. This is one that I caught on pretty early. I'm like, yeah, I think that's going to be one I'm going to end up with on my shelf at some point.
Yeah, I'm sure the expansion will be in my house sooner than later. It's that kind of game that I think I'll be playing that one for a long time.
Well, that one was your number 6, new to your list. Your number 5, however, we'll find out. Also new to the list. We talked about it earlier, though. And that
Jamie brought this one up. I had to stifle my big eyes. Another button shy game. This one's designed by Elizabeth Hargrave. The solo designed by Mike Mullins. I want to shout out Mike. He's done the solo modes for most of the button shy games. Not all the time, but much of the time he'll add the solo mode. Tussie Mussie also has a significant number of those mini expansions that have come out that are usually either 3 cards or 6 cards. pretty sure I do own everything for Tussie Mussie as of now, and I'm glad I do, because if you put those together, this is a fantastic and pretty complex, deep little game. Tussie Mussie is, how do you even describe this game? It's a little bit of bluffing. If you're playing multiplayer, you're going to end each game or each round with these 4 cards in front of you. And there's there's cards that go in your bouquet, which kind of go up a little bit. And then there's cards that are in what they call your keepsake, or like your little box or whatever. And those go down lower. So over the course of the game, what happens is I will take 2 cards off the top of the deck. I will choose to give you the option of taking one of the cards. I'm going to show those cards to you, one of them face up and one of them face down. And so I present them to you as kind of this gift. Hey, you, Jamie, get one of these cards face up or face down, and then you get to choose that card, and then you get to choose where to put it. So you, of course, can't see the face down card. You know what the face up card. So there's that little bluffing is, am I showing you the better of the two? Am I showing you the card that I want? Might the face down card be one that I want or one that you want? Do you know that I know that you know that I know? Right. So you've got a little bit of that in every single round of these 4 turns that happen. And if I'm remembering right, yeah, and then I get the other card, right? That's right. So we display the cards. You get one, I get the one that's left over of the 2. And then I put that in my tableau in one of the spaces. And then each of these cards are like, hey, if this is in your keepsake, something happens. If this is up in your bouquet, something else happens. If you have this many red cards, and you get certain points. And so you're generating points based on these 4 cards. And the amount of little cool, clever things that are done, again, with such a small card set, right? There's 18 cards. There are 4 cards in my tableau, and there's so many different ways for those cards for me to score my hand at the end of that round. Typically, you play 3 rounds. And then at the end of those 3 rounds, you have a total score. That's the winner. I think it plays 1 to 4, if I remember correctly. This is a good lunchtime game. I used to play this pre-pandemic. I played this during the lunch hour at my office. I've mostly played it solo. The solo is really, really cool. The way that the solo works is, you imagine, the solo player isn't going to be as smart. Of course, they're going to get kind of random cards, but they actually get to make theirs larger. And so in fact, this is a solo version. I just noticed at the top there, it's called the flower shop. So at the top there, you've got different things that are happening and how the AI interacts. In round 2, the AI gets to have 5 cards. And then in round 3, the AI gets to have 6 cards. So that's how they're able to kind of keep up with the scoring. And then you can expand that even more. They can actually start at 5 or 6. And then they might go, I played one the other day. I started them at 6 and then went from 6 to 7 to 8. Because I kind of know Elizabeth and kind of know Mike Mullins, I feel like I'm personally playing against them a little bit when I'm playing the solo mode, which is fun. We even had some fun interactions with Mike over Twitter whenever he destroys me or his AI destroys me in Tussie Mussie. So yeah, this one's just really good. If there's a single, I just gave myself a question. I don't know how to answer. There's a single button shy game to start with. I would probably actually maybe start with Sprawopolis, but Tussie Mussie definitely is my single favorite button shy game right now.
It was our first one that we bought, and it kind of broke the dam. But it's definitely a solid choice. It's a good bar game. We would bring it to like a cool, like, the kind of place that serves lunch, not a bar where you can't hear each other talk, that kind of thing.
I need to play my copy. I bought a copy of this and it's sat unplayed, so I'm going to change that after this video at some point, because I need to actually play it. I've done some of the other button shy ones, and Sprawopolis in particular, but yeah, not this one. So got to change that.
And by the way, from Rachel, yes to Beth Sobel. Beth actually did Viticulture as well. I didn't mention that. I haven't been calling out the artists. I think they're on some of them at least.
They are on, and if you're on the Discord, I'm pretty sure we're gonna ultimately post this at some point. You're actually be able to go right to the link. You'll be able to click through everything and see. So if you're not on our Discord, I encourage you to join the Tabletop Express Discord. Always having some great conversations, and we do share these things after the fact. This chart was designed by Ryan, who I believe went to bed, but he'll be on here on Wednesday. So if you have any questions for about it, ask him on Wednesday. But yeah, that said, Brian, we are in your top 4.
Go. Let's do it.
Now, I want to bring something up. because first and foremost, I'm going to just take this off the screen for a moment. I'm going to bring up a few things. Some people talked about your top 5. Rachel saying, and don't give anything away here, but I'm just going to say what predictions we have. Rachel had earlier mentioned she thinks some dice games might be coming, but this one, she thinks Wingspan might be in your top 5. And Mr. Rao says Candyland is coming up. I think we all know Mr.
Maybe
Rao.
and maybe.
Yeah, maybe and maybe.
Candyland's too safe of a bet. I don't know.
Yeah, way too safe. Well, let's find out. Let's go to our number 4 pick for Brian, and it is Cascadia. It was your number 4 last year. It has not moved, but it's another one of those Seattle designers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, more Seattle and more Beth Sobel. Yeah, and Beth lives near Seattle as well. Oh man, a lot's been said about Cascadia. If you're not familiar with this game, I'll give the very quick version. Super smooth, chill tile layer. It is the Seattleist of Seattle games. It's literally based in the Pacific Northwest. You're laying out habitats that you're trying to make into groups together. You want to try to keep all your mountains together, all your prairies together, but you're purchasing or you're drawing a group, a tile and a animal that goes on that tile. And then the animals are scored in several different ways. You maybe want to have a run of salmon, as you might imagine, or you want to have 2 bears together, but not 3 bears together, things of that nature. And so it does Cascadia just does such a nice job of, if you've ever played other flat out games like Calico or Verdant, Cascadia has similarities to those, but probably is not necessarily the easiest in terms of getting a great score, but the easiest to maybe not get frustrated of the 3. It's open. You're not constrained by a board on the outside. You get to make your habitat look like kind of whatever you want in terms of, it may not score as well, but you don't actually get stuck without a good thing to do in Cascadia much of the time. Also fantastic solo mode, and has a really cool solo campaign. Flat Out's done a nice job of this. Oh, geez, I should say again, disclaimer, I've done some proofreading and some stuff for Flat Out, done a lot of early testing on their stuff. I'm in the rule book for Cascadia. It was one of the first, I think this might be the first game where my name showed up in the rule book. Was a thrill at the time. Did not anticipate it'd be a Spiel winner, but I like to take as much credit as possible for that. But just a great little game. The Flat Out Games crew are good friends of mine. They make some amazing games. Randy's a fantastic human being on top of being a great designer. So can highly recommend Cascadia. What do you guys think of this one?
I'll let you go, Jamie, on this one first.
Believe it or not, I've not played it. So take it away.
Well, we can change that. PAX Unplugged. If you haven't played it, I'll bring it to PAX Unplugged.
All right, you're on.
I have a copy. I really do enjoy this game, and it is the cleanest, is what I would almost say. Like, it's the cleanest experience of the 3. Calico's such a tight game, and you can't always do something. Verdant is a good mix of both. Cascadia for me is the best of the 3, I will just say. And it offers you a little bit of freedom and just enough freedom to do your moves, giving you a chance. But if you went crazy with your freedom, you wouldn't win. And so that's to me why Cascadia is the best of that batch. But I really do like Calico too. Calico I like quite a bit. So great choice. And I will say, like in terms of Randy, he's been on the channel and was delightful to work with and get on here. So encourage people to kind of get to know these designers and these artists. On this one, Beth Sobel, of course. If Beth Sobel's done work on it, I tend to want to play it as a rule. So now we are going into the top 3. Before we do that, we have a comment I want to bring up. We have Rachel. I like the family mode Cascadia a lot. I almost prefer to play it that way. And there is a family mode. That's a great thing to bring up. The family mode does kind of simplify certain things. And it does allow you to play it with a younger audience. And I like that they made that family mode. So that's a good thing to bring up. Thank you, Rachel. Brian, we're going into your top 3. So I'm excited to see what it is. We're going to jump into number 3. And that is a new one to your list. This is not a new game. It's not a new game, because that's Agricola.
Agricola by Uwe Rosenberg. this game is on my list 100% because of the Tabletop Express and because of the video you guys did talking about Agricola and Caverna more than a year ago, I think now.
The funny thing about that video was it was 90% about Caverna, and the last 10% of that video is about Agricola. That's the hilarious part.
And then we ended up playing Agricola on BGA forever. And so also Board Game Arena is another reason that Agricola made it to the list. Yeah, confession, I've actually never played Agricola on the table yet. This is one of the few games, probably the only game on my, in fact, I would say definitely the only game in my top 20 that I haven't played on the table. I own this game. My friendly local game store had a used copy of it with all the extra bits and bytes and stuff. It is a little bit of a beast to get to the table. I will do it sometime soon. But yeah, this game is just so darn good. So classic, like the classic worker placement, not literally the first, but one of the first to probably popularize the idea. Just brutal to play. Jamie's played it with me on BGA. Riley's played it with me on BGA. I played a course with Barrows and Espen and probably several other of you in the chat and on the Discord. It's just a great game. You're building a farm. It's like the basics of farming. Really hard. It's a really hard game. It's easy to do poorly. I've played poorly many, many times, especially early on when I was first learning it. But I find it extremely rewarding. It just is. It's pretty simple is not the right word. I feel like going from the very basics of what the heck's going on, I scored -3 points at the end of this game, to that next level of, oh, I kind of understand what's going on. That doesn't take much. And that's still kind of where I am. It's like I kind of understand it. I understand the rules now. I'm not making literal mistakes, like I was the first few times that I played. But I do think that gap now from where I am now, which is not even an intermediate, but like a beginner player who understands this game, I feel like the ceiling of understanding really the strategy around this game there's a big gap there that I'm excited to learn more about.
And in this game, you can have occupations, Brian. And I think that's the thing is I would always say play with the occupations, but it's also the actions you take. Do I build another room? Do I make the space? Do I fill out this board? How am I filling out my board? There's a lot of choices to be made. For some, they'll say Caverna's better. This goes back to the video itself, where it was the video that introduced you to this game was a video about changing my mind about Caverna, which the funniest part about this was I played Caverna for the first time in a long time. I brought my score up to like a 5. And then we brought in Agricola got showed to me, and I brought Caverna's score right back down again. And I said, wait a minute, Agricola's better. Why did they even make Caverna? People still disagree on that, but I will tell people, if you haven't chance to play this, I see a few people. Yeah, no, there's no shame. To folks, I feel like that's there's no shame.
Eternal argument back and forth. People love to have that.
I think so. The other ramification of that video and your all's experience is that I ended up buying Espen's Caverna from him. Yes. So Caverna is now on my shelf. And yeah, also unplayed, although I have played that on BGA as well. I haven't played it very much yet, so I can't have a real debate of the two until I get them on my real table and play around with them both. But so far Agricola's, it's just a fantastic game. Again, no shame if there's anything. There's no single game that everyone should play. Well, should have played for sure. I would recommend trying Agricola if you ever have a chance. I think it's cool. Be a fun game to be taught in person, I think, as well, if you ever have a chance for that to be the way to experience.
You were talking about the different skill levels, and I'm still at the playing poorly one. So
I will tell you this, though. I'll tell you this. I think the crazy thing about this is, and I can understand it because I've kind of felt the same, is like you're putting this new on your list, but it's an old game. And this is the thing about games. We can rediscover these games at any given moment. And suddenly they are amongst our top 20. And I think that's what's special about the wide variety of board games that exist. And so, there's definitely no shame. There's no shame in also being able to put together a difficult list like this, Brian. And you are down to your final 2. Final 2.
Here we
go. We'll skip to
I forgot what my number 2 is. I'm actually
that's okay. Before we go to your number I'll go to your number 2. Before I go to your number 1, I'm going to ask if you have any honorable mentions you want to bring up specifically. But we're going to go to your number 2 first, and that is Azul.
Oh, of course.
And this was your number 8 last year. So it is moved up to nearly the number 1 spot. And I think many people will be familiar with Azul, but maybe you can explain for those who may come and watch and say, what the hell is Azul?
It's funny. I'm going to back off on my other statement. I do think everybody should play Azul. Everybody should at least try Azul. Jamie, please.
I have to fill my role here. What's Azul?
Perfect. Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, you're welcome. No problem.
Azul is thematically, Azul is based in Portugal, and you are adding tiles to a wall, I think, in Portugal. I'm guessing Azul maybe means blue in Portuguese, like it would in Spanish, I'm guessing. And you place the tiles in different patterns, and then different patterns earn you different points. I'm actually finding it's kind of a difficult game to explain now that I say that. But you're drafting these tiles from these different little piles, depending on player count. And then you can just kind of see the tiles get placed based on how you place those tiles. Sometimes if you get the wrong tiles, they'll fall to the floor and cause negative points. But just a very clean, clever little game. I played this one a lot in person. I played this one a lot on BGA. This is the one that actually ended up in one of those BGA tournaments last year. And I never really knew how those work, but man, you never get out of those. Once you get into one of those, it just feels like it just goes.
They're never ending.
So I played dozens. It was definitely my most played game of last year, mostly because of a BGA play, but I also played it quite a bit in person. I played it mostly at 2. Oh, important note. I believe Azul is best played at 2 because it's nasty and you can hate draft and you can really make things difficult on your opponent by making it hard for them, because negative points for your opponent are literally positive points, not literally, but they effectively are positive points for you. And so I think that's the best way to play. I've also enjoyed playing 3-player or 4-player, but I think head-to-head one-on-one is the classic Azul experience, in my opinion.
I think I'll say I haven't played it at more than 2, but I feel like 2 is the way it was designed to be played. It's really thinky at 2.
Yeah. I've played it at all levels, but it's my most I most enjoyed it too. Like if someone came out and told me we made Azul the 2-player version, I'd say I already had that. It's not like Splendor where I felt like a dual version, and some have disagreed with me at this, but where I felt a dual version for that was appropriate. Azul, if you told me there's a 2-player version, I'd be like, wait a minute, what did you do? Like what's different? It plays, and it does scale. You mentioned that you have the ability to take tiles off based on, and that amount of spots to take tiles off grows with more players. But man, at 2, this is so clean and such a fun game. And there is that I'm going to take this because now you got to take 4 and they're going to drop to your floor, and that's -2, -3. Oh, look at that. And it's kind of fun to do that. I don't mind.
It makes it really, there's a little bit of take that, or there can be. And also at 2, there's enough that you can have that direct impact on your opponent. You also, it's just enough information that you can really, at least I feel like I can kind of grok or understand what's going to happen in the next couple turns. You get to 3 and definitely to 4, and it's more of a tactical game for me at that point. I'm thinking about my turn and what I need to do, really not thinking about anybody else, because it's going to be 3 more turns before I see what's left. And so you can't, I don't at least don't have the ability to think ahead that many steps, or to be able to think about how that many people do. I did want to mention the other Azuls real quick. So Azul Summer Pavilion, I have played a little bit. I do have that one. I like it. Quite a bit. I think it's pretty good. The stained glass one I played, but had some major color vision problems with that. So I just kind of bailed on it and have never gone back.
I don't think you missed much, to be honest. Yeah. I didn't like that one that much, but that's me.
And then I haven't played Queen's Garden, but similarly, it's got some pretty major color vision issues from what I can see from the screenshot. So I just kind of haven't gone to the trouble. And there is, dang it, I wanted to add one more game that's kind of similar. If you've seen this one around but haven't tried it yet, it's called Mandala Stones. So there's a game called Mandala. There's a game called Mancala, right? But then there's also a Mandala. There's also a Mandala Stones. Mandala Stones is really cool. And Mandala Stones has that similar clicky. The tiles are very similar. Oh, the thing about Azul too, if you didn't really see it or haven't played it, the tactical. It comes out of a bag, and you have that clickiness of those tiles. Oh, they're fantastic. So that makes them special. It's just a special game. It would not be at all the same game if those were cardboard chits or something. And it needs to be the tacticalness of the tiles there makes them different.
You make a great point. This is one of those games where if you just played this online, to me, yes, a wonderful game. But when you get to physically play this game, pulling those chunky pieces out and putting them on your board, I spent for the expansion to buy the plastic like overlay so the pieces slot in perfectly, and I don't even, I wouldn't do that for most games. So that goes to show you how much like I felt about this game. So.
I found the overlay, Chris, the tiles go in better, but the point little tracker at the top is worse for me. And so I don't know what to do about that. I almost want to cut it off or something.
I don't disagree with you. The point tracker at the top's a little off because they give you space. It almost slides sometimes. I'm not sure what the design.
Yeah, it's weird. It doesn't feel quite right. Jamie, I think I talked over you twice.
They definitely fall into the forbidden snack territory, though.
Oh, well, especially if you play the chocolatier version.
Yes, yeah.
You're gonna want.
They're with Honey Buzz. They're like, you look at them and you're like, whew, if those were on the table and I had something that was even like remotely close to that, it would not be unrealistic for me to accidentally grab that and almost pop it in my mouth.
Don't eat Starbursts and play Azul.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, to that point, I'm a no food at the table gamer, and so no shame or no, I don't want to get into that argument. I have no problem with people who choose to do so, but I'm just my way.
So just to keep the anticipation alive, I have to ask you, Brian, any honorable mentions or anything you want to mention before we go and click on your number one here?
Yeah, I'm going to do some bad video and look around my office real quick to pick out those because I forgot to make this list before.
I'm throwing a curveball at you. So
no, that's good.
I will tell everybody how you look for that. Take a moment and look. And I'm going to tell everybody just a quick heads up. Ryan, who was in the chat earlier, will be back with me on Wednesday. I will be maybe with Ryan. I might go to the quote unquote studio there. And then Riley is going to be my special guest, and my top 20 will drop when I do my top 20. If we do have any crossover, we will be able to note that. But we didn't want to reveal crossover ahead of time. So all the crossovers that are going to happen will be revealed kind of as we go with all our videos. We have 5 top 20 videos happening in this month, and I can't wait for you to see everybody's. So I know Anthony will have his, Danielle's going to have one drop at the end of the month, and then Ryan's going to go next week as well. So we have some good ones coming. So some things to look forward to.
I'm ready. All right. There's so many. So I'm going to do them very quickly and give like a one sentence. Castles of Burgundy is another old classic that I just learned last year in a very similar way. Tim from Board Game Hot Takes. We kind of play like we're frenemies, but really he's fantastic. And he taught me how to play Castles of Burgundy on BGA. That was really cool. I have that, but haven't. Another one I haven't played the physical version. Star Wars: The Clone Wars is the newest kind of pandemic thing. It's like uses a pandemic system generally, but it's based on the Clone Wars. I'm a Star Wars nerd, and so it's been really fun to play that. That's my favorite version. That probably has killed base pandemic for me. I think I'd be surprised if I play. I haven't played Pandemic Legacy yet, and I want to, so I think I'll probably still play that someday, but I don't know that I'll play base pandemic. A couple games I haven't played enough yet would be Spirit Island. I've just barely scratched the surface on that. In fact, I just picked up the Target version also. So I could see getting into that quite a bit this next year. And I could definitely see ending up on my list. It's, considered one of the best solo games. I know it's Ryan. Nope. It is Riley Stock's favorite game of all time. So it would not surprise me if that one rises way up. And Bullet Heart is another one I wanted to mention. It's a bag building game based on kind of like what do they call those? Like a bullet hell game. And again, I just barely played it. I did put the little pieces in those plastic, what are those called? The capsule things, like coin capsules.
Oh, the coin capsules.
Man.
Yeah.
Dude, that would have made my top 20 if we got to add components. Coin capsules have changed my life this year. I've added them to that. I've added them to, another game that I have to talk about with Jamie on is Disney Sidekicks, We're going to be co-writing a whole story about Disney Sidekicks over the next couple months. Jamie actually painted my components for Disney Sidekicks. Disney Sidekicks is a mass market game. For a long time, you could find it for like $7 or $8 on Amazon. It's an Eric Lane game. I find it fantastic. It's a very difficult co-op game to win. It's kind of like a tower defense-ish. Not quite that, but it's got that vibe. I think it's kind of been vilified. I think a lot of Eric Lang's mass market stuff's been vilified a little bit lately. I'm a Marvel United fan. We won't get into that debate today, but I think Disney Sidekicks in particular is really interesting. And then Jamie had the challenge of painting minis that are made out of cheapo plastic from Walmart, not like legit minis of the stuff that she normally does for wargaming and more hobby games. So I don't know, Jamie, give like any 30-second on that.
Yeah, so the quick and dirty is that like the stuff I normally paint is built out of what's called HIPS, or high impact polystyrene. So it's designed to interact with the solvents in spray can or like rattle can spray paints, which is usually what I use to prime my minis. You got to put a primer layer on there or the paint doesn't go on to look really nice, which is ultimately what you want on your minis. This is probably already way too much information, but basically when mass market games are produced, they obviously use a cheaper plastic to keep the cost lower. And when doing that, you run into some issues with, spray painting those models. I was not super aware of that at first. So my first go at spray painting the models turned out very poorly. I had to strip the models and start over. Luckily, they stripped very cleanly. I managed to reprime them, and I learned a very, very valuable lesson during that project.
And I have fantastic beautiful Disney minis that I'm excited to show. Also a Disney nerd along my other, I'm a very basic guy here. I like Disney, Star Wars, and Lord of the Rings. Not too complicated, but yeah, I'll be trying to take some like legitimately good photos of those, which I haven't done yet. And we'll do a whole it's going to be a how to bling out your mass market game in defense of mass market games. A painting diary from Jamie as part of that article too. So we're going to do a whole thing and looking forward to that. We haven't started writing that yet. So, keep an eye out sometime in the next few months, but maybe we'll do better than Chris and I, who were going to, write an article 2 years ago that we haven't done yet.
2 years late on New York Zoo. So,
New York Zoo.
Oh,
mine is still on my shelf though. So there's still a dream there to write that article. All right, let's do it, Chris. Number one.
Well, the real dream is, what is your number one? I know a few people are anticipating it, and here it is. Here's where the real drum roll will be. And this one, not surprising me at all, your number one is Cartographers. It was your number 3 last year, Jordy Aiden, with this one by Thunderwork Games from 2019. Let's talk Cartographers. I am not surprised at all. Since I did not see it for all your other ones, kind of figured this was coming.
Yeah, it's just a couple of things. Sticking with the theme of roll and writes, which, as you see, is one of my favorite styles of games. Another game that does just so many things well. So in Cartographers, you are a cartographer, literally. It's in the world of role players. So if anybody's played Role Player, also a great game. Didn't have to be in my top 20, but it's a game I like a lot. Also by Thunderworks. And you had these decrees, which not too dissimilar from what's the other game I talked about? Another game I talked about today, where you could have these different scoring conditions. Cartographers has these different. Sprawopolis. There's actually a little bit of weird combination of these two. That you get these different combination of scoring conditions, and there's also there's different polyominoes of different types. So you may have a forest polyomino, or a water polyomino, or a village polyomino that needs to go on your board. There's also these monsters that can attack you, and depending on if you're playing multiplayer, you get to do a little take that, where you actually place those monsters you want on your opponent's board. You actually get to write on their sheet, which is a little bit alarming. The first time that happened, to have somebody else marking on my sheet was weird. I find I enjoy it now if I play that way. Although I mostly play Cartographers solo, another theme today. Has a fantastic solo mode. In that case, there's just kind of a little bit of a path or some instructions on where the goblins or the monsters go when they come up. And it's in some ways there's not a whole lot to it, and yet there's so much to it. It's just a beautiful game. Plays very smooth, very quick. maybe once you kind of get into it, maybe 20 to 30 minutes for a single session. Very easy to also rip another sheet, or if if you're doing wipe off your pad if you've laminated or whatever, and just go again. And the car, yeah, it's an easy game to reset, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So that's just the base game. There's an expansion, Cartographers Heroes, that brings in a whole nother set of these heroes that can then help you and makes the monsters harder, but then also gives you some allies to help you out in the form of heroes. Man, what else?
And
it's beautiful.
The new maps.
Oh my gosh. And then the map packs. Yeah, there's 6 map packs that can be used. The beauty of all this stuff is they can be used in any combination. Any of these new map packs. So the base game comes with 2 maps. The heroes comes with 2 other maps. So you have 4 maps already. And then each of these map packs comes with another map or 2 sometimes, and usually another set of cards. It's kind of these mini expansions, not too dissimilar from Button Shy again, to just make the game a little bit different. And so one of them puts a big volcano in the middle, and that the lava from the volcano spreads out over the course of the game. Another one actually opens up this little shop where you can buy things from the shop, and it's a little bit more of a complex experience. Another one has these different beacons to light, a la Return of the King or something from Lord of the Rings again, where you're trying to light these beacons and do certain things. And again, you can combine these in several different ways. I've played dozens of games of Cartographers, and I know I've never had the exact same setup twice in that game. So similar to, again, I never maybe hadn't fully made this connection between Sprawopolis and Cartographers having that many similarities, but they kind of do. And Cartographers for me does it, even better. It has a lot more to work with, right? It's a roll and write game. A flip and write, I guess. I called it a roll and write. This one technically is a flip and write. There's no dice. You are flipping a small deck of cards to then determine what the different decrees. The thing about these scoring conditions too, just if you look on that image on the left, during the first turn, I guess, or first season, you're going to score the A card and the B card. And then the next season, you're going to score the B card and the C card. Well, after those first 2 turns, that B card is done. You can even, I've gotten in the habit of flipping it upside down now just to remind myself that I'm not scoring it anymore. So once you get past that twice, you're done. And that A card in the first column, that's not going to score again until the very end. And so there's just so many little layers of strategy to think about whenever you're trying to determine which one of these am I going to go after when. And if I want to go after this B card, I need to do it right away because I only have 2 turns out of my 4 turns to do that. But the A card, I might be able to kind of wait it out and really have a gigantic score at the end. And lots of nuances I haven't brought up, but just a fantastic game. I wrote probably one of my most in-depth articles I've ever written on my website a couple months ago about Cartographers. I did a full review. It is fully colorblind friendly, which is nice. Although you also, and people have done this, you can make beautiful maps using all the colors from the different, you make all your forest spaces green, you make all your water spaces blue, and there's some really cool, beautiful maps people have made with a finished game. It's one of those games too, where your finished product, kind of like Cascadia, like Sprawopolis again, your finished product, even number 9 is like photo worthy, if that makes sense. Cartographers feels like that. If
you're talented with a colored pencil, you can make gorgeous looking maps. I am not that, but I really do enjoy the expansions, adding the heroes. The collector's edition was worth owning and continuing to add, though I don't know how many more map expansions will fit in the thing. We'll see. But it is really enjoyable. And that middle one also shows the solo kind of scoring. So you are trying to get a best score, but which may not be for most, but the game is so different every time that I really do enjoy the solo in this as well. It's a great choice. I think this was on my list last year. I'd have to double check. It might have been that bottom 10 for me, but Cartographers, fantastic choice. And my only complaint about this game, just so you know, Brian, is the text on the decree cards, or that you're trying to accomplish. That is my only challenge is that copy could have been, it didn't have to be the fancy writing. They could have made that a more legible writing, but other than that, I mean, that literally is my only complaint about this game.
Yeah, I have the same complaint. Along with color vision, I also try to speak to a low vision user, and it's both low contrast, it's all capital letters, and it's in italics. And so it's just brutal to read. And at this point, I've read them all enough that I kind of have them memorized enough that I don't have to like remember exactly what they say, or I play a lot of my games in pretty highlight conditions anyway. But you're right. That's definitely one issue that's not ideal, but you're right. One small flaw from
no game is truly
your perfect game. So very cool. Yeah, Jamie, you had mentioned this one. I had to hold my tongue again.
I was going to ask if you were having trouble with that one. This is one of my absolute favorites, and I fully stand by the fact that this is the game I bring to people who are not like hobby gamers, because I think this is the perfect gateway game. It teaches so many different mechanics. It teaches like how to, I mean, there's the the simultaneous play that makes it move really quickly. There's so many different, like just great things about it that I love. I went all in on it I want to say it was at PAX this year. I can't remember. But I went in, I got everything for it. And I adore this game. It's so good. I have all the colored pencils. So of course I do. I'm sure that comes as no surprise to you guys, but
no surprise.
I have all the colored pencils. I got all the maps, and I bring it out whenever I possibly can.
Well, look, I just want to commend you on a great list. For those who have joined late, we'll just do a quick review here. Your number 20 was Pokemon trading card game. We had number 19, Gloomhaven, Jaws of a Lion. Number 18, Aquamarine. 17, Sprawopolis. 16, Clank Legacy. 15, Rolling Realms. 14, Super Skill Pinball. 13, Legendary Marvel, the card building game. And then we get into your near the top 10, The Lord of the Rings showing up, no surprise. Abandon All Artichokes, which was a welcome surprise, I think. And then your top 10, Viticulture, number 9, Fleet the Dice Game, Fantastic Factories, The Red Cathedral, Tussie Mussie, Cascadia, Agricola, Azul, and topping off at number 1, Cartographers. To a question, by the way, in the chat, D-Nix asked, base expansion enough to start? Quite frankly, I like the base expansion if you can start with it. The only thing I like about the Heroes expansion, and I'll let Brian, I want you to chime in on this, is I do really like the heroes and the harder monsters. And that for me is that's the crux of why I really end up playing with them every time now.
It's interesting. I kind of go the opposite. I actually find that I like the base a little more than heroes. I'm not even sure why. Again, I play mostly solo. I think the heroes and the bigger monsters they would like battle each other more often, I think, if that makes sense, if you're playing multiplayer, because I would put the dragons in the worst place for you, and then you might need the heroes. I find in solo, they don't always quite come up in the right order to tell that story in the same way. So it maybe kind of depends, D-Nix, if you're thinking solo or not. All that said, I had base Cartographers with no expansions for quite a while, maybe 6 or 8 months, and had plenty of fun with just that game. Liked it enough that I wanted to start getting the other stuff. And then adding the other expansions, you could do it in any order. You could add heroes next if you wanted to. You could just add a single map pack and play around with that for a while. I would point you to my website because I did an entire rundown of my own kind of ranking or rating. I gave a BGG rating for every expansion and the base game and heroes, just my personal ratings. So you can see what those are. But I also gave some description about why I felt that way about them. So that might be a good place to start, just to kind of get a feel for that. So again, that's just at colorblindgames.com. You can just search on Cartographers.
I'm dropping a link to that for everybody in the comments section as well. I just pulled that. So go check that out. I want to take a moment, Jamie, first and foremost, to say thank you for joining us tonight. It's been wonderful, obviously, having you on the channel now twice in past 4 weeks, really. So it's been such a joy. Thank you for taking some time to be with us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've been really enjoying coming on, so I appreciate being invited.
And Brian, of course, great job on your list. For those who are interested, if you're in the Discord, I know we'll probably share a link to this so you can actually go see and kind of scroll through everything. And we'll do that for everybody else, I believe. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Come on back Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time.
Sorry, I had one more thing. I just wanted Jamie to pitch your stuff, and if you put your Twitch link in the in the chat, especially. I want people to be able to bookmark you as well.
Sure. Yeah. So if anyone's interested in any of my content, typically I am streaming over at daggers.tv or twitch.tv/Jamie Daggers. I stream Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, usually noon to 5. Thursday nights, I usually do 8 to midnight, and I tend to have a board game person on, whether it's one of my friends and we're playing a game, or a lot of times I'll have designers on. I just had Brian McKay, the creator of Pocket Paragons, and Breeze Grigus, the creator of Aegis, on a couple weeks ago. I love getting new people on and just getting to talk to them and hear about their passion projects and stuff like that. So we get all sorts of characters on, and it's just a really enjoyable part of something I get to do. So I would love to have anyone come join and check out the stream whenever. So, and also you can just find me anywhere on socials at Jamie Daggers, pretty much.
and you'll find, I know we have a promo section on our Discord that whenever Jamie's doing something, Jamie drops the link in there, so you'll also be able to find it there. Thank you again, Jimmy. Brian, thank you for the time you spent on this. And thank you for making sure we did give Jamie a chance to plug her channel one more time. I did drop that link in the chat if you want, just clickable link right there. On that note, I will say again, please join us on Wednesday if you're free. I'll be dropping my top 20. I can tell you, I won't say the number, but there will be crossovers. That I can say. There will be crossovers. You might be able to guess which ones they are, but we'll find out. We'll find out on Wednesday. I want to thank everybody for coming aboard the Tabletop Express this evening. And on that note, I will say thank you. We will see you all, hopefully Wednesday. But on that note, thank you and have a great night, everybody.